Welcome to another episode of Records Revisited, a podcast dedicated to the magic of music. I'm your DJ, your MC, the host on the East Coast. I'm Ben Montgomery. Joining me is the man that they call him the Hunter. That's his name. Here's my co-host from the left coast, whose bone structure is more striking to me than all his lack of empathy. Here's Wayne Fugate.
Hola, Ben Amin.
So for this episode, we have a special guest. His last full-length record came out in 2020. It's called Bone Structure. I just referenced that. But he's been releasing some recent singles, including Minneapolis Cold and Any Angel Will Do. Please welcome to the podcast, Ron Pope.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Absolutely. It is our absolute pleasure to have you on here. And, well, let's get to it. So premise of our podcast, fairly simple. We talk about music, but as we do at the beginning of each episode, I ask the all-important question. I'm going to start with Wayne. What T-shirt are you wearing?
We've had lots of guests from the Austin area, and during one episode, I ordered this T-shirt from Antone's, home of the blues.
Yeah, this is what Wayne does during the interview portion of the episodes, while he's letting me run on with the guest. Wayne is ordering T-shirts. That's what he did on that episode. He texted me afterwards. He was like, "So here's a picture of T-shirt I just ordered." So, anyway.
I was my last record, Bone Structure. Matt Ross Spang mixed it, and he was saying when you're in the studio with John Prine, because he worked with John Prine, one of the really cool things is like everybody in the studio is always shopping for something on their phone, pretty much. Like at this, some people it's like guitars or pedals or basses, whatever. Everybody's always looking at something. He said Jason Isbell is a sneakerhead, so he's ordering sneakers. People like, they have their thing. And John Prine was always shopping for Cadillacs. I was like, that's cool. That's much cooler than buying guitar pedals.
That's much cooler than shopping for T-shirts. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How about you, Ron? What T-shirt are you wearing?
I am wearing, this is one that my wife got me as a gift. It is a Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion 1991-1992 tour T-shirt. One of the anniversaries, the traditional gift is some sort of medal. And she was like, okay, all right, sort of, sure. And so Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion 91-92 tour T-shirt.
Love it.
Yeah, big fan.
Yep. And I was supposed to go to that tour with you, Wayne.
I went on that tour twice. I got a cool shirt from the Metallica Guns N' Roses show, and then I got that same shirt from the show in Tacoma Dome.
Yeah, stupid James getting lit up on fire. Anyways, James Hetfield. We had tickets to go to that Tacoma Dome concert, and it was right before I was supposed to go back to college. And then, of course, James got hurt. They delayed the tour, and so I was already 13 hours away.
Oof.
So Wayne,
I went.
Wayne still went.
Wayne still went.
I know, and he rubs it in.
Slash came out and played with Motorhead. It was great. It's a lot of fun.
I hate you. All right. So I am wearing a shirt that I've been wearing a lot lately. It's my Neil Young Harvest T-shirt. So I love it. I probably wear it once a week. So there we go.
I know that y'all often have people that are like friends of mine on this podcast, and as a result, I was like going through my T-shirts, and I was like, I can't wear like Caroline Spence or Lily Hyatt merch on here. Like, then they're gonna come on and they're gonna find out that I'm wearing their T-shirts all the time, and then they're gonna like not want to come over to my house anymore. So
Well, at least you have a Lily Hyatt T-shirt. That's a point of contention on the podcast. So I've seen her a couple times, and she hasn't had any XL T-shirts for sale. So yeah.
Now, Ron's website is guilty of the same thing. There were a couple of cool shirts on there, but no XLs.
We are out of almost everything. I don't know what's been, I guess because we haven't had a tour coming up in so long. Usually what happens is like we come home from tour and we have a bunch of merch, like from the end of the tour. And so we don't even like think about reordering. But I think it's like, I've been home for over a year. It's, so that's, we do know about this. I know what's going on, and we're ready to fix it. So we're not trying to discriminate against anybody. If we don't have an extra small or a 2XL, it's not because we're against you. It's because people bought them already, and we forgot to get more. That's all.
Yeah, that was Wayne's way of saying, Ron, take my money.
Yeah, well, I'm ready.
Live in sweatpants. I was like, I'm getting that.
Yeah.
No XLs.
Yeah. All right. Well, Wayne and I both love Bone Structure. In fact, Wayne included one of your songs on our 2020 most listened to songs list. Wayne, remind us what song that was.
Take the Edge Off.
Yeah. Great song. Great song.
Yeah, love that song.
Thank you. With the great Emily Scott Robinson.
Yes. She's on your label, correct?
No. She did do so. Blair, who is my business partner and my manager, and also my wife, Blair, they're doing these they call them marketing partnerships, where artists we come in for the length of their release cycle, but we don't, they're not like signed to the label, so they retain ownership of their recordings, and so we got to work the first Emily Scott Robinson album, which was really cool. But no, she's out there in the world. She's a free agent. Somebody go ahead and sign her.
Yeah, she's great too. Yeah. So this week I listened to the podcast episode you did with Emily Kinney on my caffeine withdrawal. So you kind of already told your story of how you got into the industry and how you decided to go independent, how you created your own label, which I just kind of mentioned. So it's Brooklyn Basement Records. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Okay. So I will tell people, go check out that episode if you want to hear the whole history of Ron. It was really great. Hoping to get Emily on the podcast soon as well.
She's really, really great, and she's very engaged and interested. So she's a great host, but she also is a great interview. I think she's cool, and she's like a Renaissance woman. She's making music and she's writing poetry, and she's obviously an actress. So she's cool. I really liked doing that episode of her podcast because my cousin, who used to be my guitar tech and tour manager and had different jobs for me over the years, my cousin just showed up in LA that morning to surprise me. He had retired from touring a few years before and gotten a grown-up job. And so he just surprised me, and we got to spend the day together. I was like, let's go do this interview together. And so I brought my cousin with me to go do the interview, and it was... we used to travel, we traveled around the world together for years and years. So we were, hopped up on too much cold brew and also very happy to see each other. So I was very animated that morning, to say the least.
Yeah, that was a fun episode. And yeah, your cousin even chimed in on a couple things where I think maybe your history was a little cloudy and he jumped in and was like, oh, no, it was this. So anyways, a lot of fun. Definitely go check out Emily's podcast. One thing that the episode didn't really focus on that I read in your bio, so you were a baseball player and you were on the Rutgers University baseball team, but you got injured, and that's kind of how did that turn into music career?
I mean, I was always playing music. I was always in a band, writing songs from my early teens. But I also was playing baseball. I was playing sports, and baseball became the thing. The bulk of my energies were pointed at, because you can't really half do it. You have to kind of do it or not do it.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that, but while also being in a band and playing guitar and writing songs. And then when baseball ended, I kind of, I was used to the structure of, this is what I do with all of my energy. And I just kind of pointed that into my music from there on out. And so, it just went from a thing that I did to being the thing that I did, basically.
Yeah. What position did you play?
Shortstop, very poorly.
The defensive portion or the offensive portion poorly?
All of it. The whole
all
thing.
Of it.
Just all of it. Just terrible.
Okay. All right. Well, did you at least hit above the Mendoza line?
Absolutely. I was fine. It's just, it's funny. It's this is something that I did, I did it, as a child until my late teens. And so it's it's been as long since I stopped playing as like my whole life before that, and so it's just like, it's funny that I still talk about it, because it's like so far removed from my life that it's like, sometimes I forget that I did it.
Right. You still a baseball fan?
Yeah, I'm a big Mets fan. It's one of those things like being a shorter man, let's say. It's like, if you could choose, you wouldn't choose to be, 5'4" as a guy, let's say. You'd probably choose to be a little taller. You can live a great life, and that's what it's like to be a Mets fan. It's like, nobody picks, like, people don't sign up to be a Mets fan, but you can live a full life as one, even though there's going to be days where you're like, I just wish that I could, be a Yankees fan this year or something. But it's like in your blood. It's like it's like a genetic thing, or like having big ears. It's really more like having big ears. Like, I'm just living my life. I have these big ears. There's nothing I can do about it. It's not really holding me back, but I would prefer if they were a little smaller. That's what it's like to be a Mets fan most years.
I grew up in Tacoma, Washington. Wayne is still out there in Washington. I've been a lifelong Seattle Mariners fan. That's even worse than being a New York Mets fan. Because at least the Mets have...
Yeah, we don't even have 1986.
Right.
Yeah.
You can at least go, well, in my lifetime, there was, Mookie Wilson and Ray Knight, and we won a World Series. Mm-hmm. And the Mets have been to the World Series since then. So
yeah. In 2015, in Game 5 of the World Series, I'm at Citi Field with my father and my brother. My dad, when the lead gets blown, he gets up, he goes to the bathroom. And I was like, it's the 9th inning. What do you mean you're going to the bathroom? He's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And he gets up very calmly, and he walks, and he goes to the bathroom, and he comes back. And I was like, have you been crying? And he was like, maybe. It was an emotional night, guys. It was an emotional night. So, it's his grandfather. Right when the Mets started up in '62, he had been waiting for NL baseball to come back to New York after the Dodgers left. So when the Mets came, '62, he becomes a fan. They're the worst team in the history of baseball that year. They have the worst record ever in any regular season, and it's It's mostly been uphill since then, Like we're working our way. It's not downhill. You can't get worse than the worst season ever. So we're going like this. We're getting better.
Yeah. Well, they got to contend with the Braves this year. Braves are going to be really good.
Yeah, we'll see. That's why they play the games,
That's right.
When you guys say Tacoma, how many people go, "Whoa, Tacoma"?
No one.
None.
No one does that?
No one. No.
You guys know what it is, though.
Other than a really stinky place.
Oh, no. Like Tommy Lee in the cage upside down with the drums. There's like a viral video or a very popular video online of Tommy Lee in he has like the drum roller coaster, and he goes upside down and he yells like, "Whoa, Tacoma." Okay.
Oh, okay.
You guys must have missed that one. Look it up. Whoa, Tacoma.
Okay.
That's my gift.
Not a Crew fan. I'm going to defer that over to Wayne.
You should go ahead. How do I hang up? Not a Crew fan. Motley. This is the thing. Let's before we talk about anything else, let's talk about Motley Crue for 1 minute. Here's the thing.
Okay.
The reason, if you look at Motley Crue through this lens, okay. LA punk is happening. All this minimalist, shirt ripped up, held together with safety pins, crappy songs that nobody cares about nonsense is happening around them. And what they decide to do is absolutely be themselves and do this thing that they love and put on a show as if they're in an arena, even in the clubs. And it's just about fun. It's not about the content of the music. They're just making it a party. They're hosting a party, and the point of the thing is escapism, whereas all of this other music is about how bad the world is at that time.
Right.
And then they become the most popular band in the world for a period of time. So popular, in fact, that if you show up on the Sunset Strip in the right pair of pants with your hair done the right way, you could get a record deal. That's how significant the contribution of that band was. And now I understand there's a lot of negative about them, but I think about them in that light. I'm like, these are guys who absolutely chose to do something that no one was doing, and followed that all the way to the top. And that is very infrequent that something like that happens in popular music, where you say, I'm going to be myself, and then it makes you like a world beater. It takes you all the way to the top of the mountain. Like almost everything else that gets that far is derivative in some way. And I just don't think they are. And that's what's very fascinating about them. But I get why people don't like them.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. I've seen Motley Crue more than I've seen any other band.
Oh, such a show, man. I mean, obviously, it's like seeing Van Halen like later on. It's like, you know, even when they got Diamond Dave back, it's like that guy's not, you know, he stayed in great shape, God bless him, but he's not like, you know, Kung Fu David Lee Roth of 40 years ago.
No, that's golden era for me. Yeah.
I was dancing with my baby to Panama this morning, by the way.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. All right. All right, switching gears. I don't know how to segue from Motley Crue to the questions I've got for you. So I mentioned that you've already released a couple singles from your website. You indicated that every 2 weeks until July 22nd of 2021, a song's going to be released. So you labeled this project as The Builder. So I'm assuming this is all building up to new record, correct?
No.
Okay.
No, so what happened was, in short order here, so I was on a break. We had done a U.S. tour leading up to the release of Bone Structure, and then we were home for a little while. We went to New York, we did some press, we came back to Nashville, and then immediately we had a tornado. Like a Monday going into a Tuesday, we had a tornado in the nighttime. And that was like the 3rd of March. And then Bone Structure came out the 6th. So I stopped doing, you know, all the stuff you have to do when a record comes out. I was basically like, I will do none of these things. If you need me, I'll be outside. I've got like a broom over one shoulder and I'm carrying a chainsaw. And I'm out with my friends, like trying to clean up the neighborhood. And, you know, we were not just working in my own neighborhood. This was a big deal. This destroyed everything in its path. It was not like it just touched down for a moment and disappeared. It was,
right.
You know, so we were doing that for a few, you know, probably, I guess, 2 weeks or so roughly. And then the quarantine stuff started happening. And so at the beginning of the quarantine, one of my friends was like, you know, I've been playing online, just acoustic into my computer, you know, on social media. You should do that. People have really enjoyed it. It's been like a nice distraction for my fans. And I was like, all right, sure. So I signed on, you know, like I did Facebook Live, we did Instagram, and we called these shows Live and in Sweatpants because I'm home in my pajamas, you know, like walking around in my slippers in my house. And just, you know, it was like not, you know, it was very off the cuff. I was just playing. And then I thought, all right, well, I started doing a few of them a week. And then I was like, well, why don't I try to see if I can do like no repeats? So I did a bunch of shows in a row where I didn't repeat any songs, and like maybe did 100 of my songs or something like that, where I didn't repeat a single one. So we got into this groove, and the fans were, you know, participating. And I kind of realized as time went on that we were doing this, that people were really, like the people in our community were taking something from these shows. It was like a nice thing. They had something to look forward to, and they were very engaged as a result. And so Blair and I started talking, and we were like, well, why don't we finish some of these recordings that we have that like we didn't get to, or we didn't get right for the album, you know, like, or we didn't that still need a harmony, still need a horn part, you know, whatever. Yeah. I didn't like the mix, you know, let's go back and we'll just start releasing songs because it'll give people something to look forward to. And so it was really about, like the name The Builder, it's about like building a bridge between us and the members of the, you know, the community that surrounds my music, and between all of them. Because in addition, you know, to your, like as a fan, your relationship with the artist and the music, you know, a big part of being a fan of music, I think it's also being a member of the community. You go to the shows and you're a part of, you know, the relationship that you have with all of these other people in the audience, like in addition to your relationship with the music and your relationship with the artist. And so that's what the Builder is about. And so we started releasing songs in July of last year. And yeah, we're releasing something every other week. And it's been really cool. And then at the end of it, I don't know what's going to happen. Honestly, I'm still, that's a number of months from now. And so for now, I'm just, it's just given me a way to continuously interact with the people in my audience and give them something to look forward to and, something to connect us all to each other. And that's it. Those are the bridges we're building. It's not necessarily something building towards the next album.
I love it. So these aren't considered like B-sides or demos. They are what they are.
Yeah, no, because some of them are as a for instance, some of them are just songs that like we decided it's like, so Bone Structure, I recorded it for about 2 years. In the middle of the process, this crazy thing happened. I'll tell you very quickly, but it was like we were in England and I was flying back from a gig, and then right after the car dropped me off where we were staying, the guy got attacked by, like on my street, he got attacked by 2 masked men. And so he was able to get away, and he was frantic. He thought that these people were trying to kidnap me. And so he was freaking out. And I was like, why? Like, I'm not Beyonce. No, nobody's trying to snatch me, dude. And I thought he was trying to run some kind of scam. Like, I didn't understand what was happening because it was all very incongruous and confusing. And then I looked out the window, and the car that he described these men jumping out of was now parked directly in front of my house where I was staying. So I was like, oh God, like what is happening? And it turned out that, the police came, they talked to us, they calmed us down, and they said it's probably just a robbery. They saw, a black van with the, taxi tags coming from the airport. They assumed there was somebody in it to rob. The cops were, they made us feel a lot better. But it was, for a few hours, I'm there with my wife, and my daughter was like maybe 8 months old. And it was really scary. And so we'd been recording Bone Structure for maybe like a year and a few months at that point. And I decided immediately, once I kind of came back to my senses, I was like, I started thinking about how fragile life is and how, short, a time we all have on this earth. And I was like, if I died today, my daughter wouldn't know me. And so I decided that I would write songs where I was either speaking about my own experience and telling a story that I thought she could use, or like telling her about events from my own life that I thought had some kind of moral, like either speaking about being her father and how that's affected me, or, things that have happened in my own life that I thought she might find value in the story. And so we basically just started again. So I had almost a full album worth of material that it no longer fit the narrative. And so much of that I had, like Any Angel Will Do, as a for instance, that is one of these songs. And I love that song. And we worked on it forever. I'm not allowed to curse, so I can't say the title of the song.
You can.
There's that Eels song. It's called "It's a Mother Effort."
Right. Yeah.
So it's this beautiful, this delicate arrangement, beautiful orchestral arrangement. And so we went out and found the person who did that beautiful arrangement, and we worked with them, and we built this. It was like, so as an example, like Any Angel Will Do, I maybe spent more time and money on that recording than any other recording on Bone Structure. So it's certainly not it's not like a throwaway. It's just, it didn't fit the album anymore.
Yeah.
Any angel will do. If they'll send one for you, they send one for me. Any angel will do. If they'll send one for you, will they send one for me too? It all seems so simple then, when every answer had a question that it didn't burn to hear.
And so I've got a lot of stuff like that. Like, in the last handful of years, I've been constantly working. So I had a ton of things. And then, like, in the midst of it, I did write, like, I recorded Joni Mitchell's River, where I just cut I had somebody cut those guitar parts, and then I cut a vocal on top of it. And that, so some of it was like, postal service, remote recording and stuff, because we couldn't be in the rooms with each other. so some of it I did as we went, but a lot of it was, some of this stuff that that like when we were making the Ron Pope and the Nighthawks album, we went through this period where we were doing a particular sort of arrangement that I really, really loved, but then we didn't make the album with any of those songs on it. It was like the pedal steel forward upright bass, like the Von Gray sisters, who are the Von Gray is a band, and they're a bunch of sisters. They have beautiful harmonies, so it's like very rootsy, like a lot of banjos and mandolins and stuff. And we just didn't use any of that on the album because sonically it just didn't go with some of the more kind of like aggressive kind of stuff that the band was doing. And so I just have like almost I don't, like at least an EP, maybe a full-length album's worth of that material too. That is part of what I'm including here. So yes, I don't know. I just have
amazing.
I'm always working, and then I'm, to the great chagrin of my manager, label head wife, I'm constantly like, okay, now I know I've spent all this money and all this time and all this energy, but what if I did something completely different right now? And she's like, okay. It's that's one of the, I would say, probably most annoying things about working with me is how regularly I'm like, what if we put down this thing I have been working on for a very long time and then I just completely do something else. But
I think that comes through. I mean, I was re-listening to Bone Structure over the weekend, and I think, I've mentioned this a million times on the podcast, Wayne, of how, to me as a listener of an album in full, the sequencing and kind of telling the whole story instead of just telling a whole bunch of singles really is important to me. And I always felt like Bone Structure, from the time that I listened to it the first time, in March of 2020, was that there is a sequence to it. There is that it does tell a story. I can totally see, and hearing you talking about all of these songs that you've recorded, and it's like, well, didn't fit into the album that I was envisioning. So,
and sometimes also it's like we go into the studio with an idea, like for example, on the Work album, when we went in to make Work, my favorite of the songs walking into the studio was a song called Good Life. I was like absolutely in love with it. I was so excited to do it. And then we got in the studio and I could not get it right. I couldn't figure out how to arrange it. This is like one of the biggest challenges of producing yourself. It's like when you run out of ideas and you look over your shoulder to ask the other person and then there's nobody there, like it's just you go and sit in that chair. Right. That's, I kind of just reached a wall where I couldn't figure out how to do it. And so that ended up as part of like the extended collection of songs from that album, because it took me like another 6 months to figure out how to make the recording sound like something that I liked. So, sometimes it's as simple as that. It's just like, it's not easy to get the recordings just right sometimes.
Is it the control aspect that you don't want to find a producer in those situations where you're like, I'm right at the precipice of figuring this out, but I need a second voice?
I haven't used a producer on an album since the very first album that we did with The District in 2003. 2003 going into 2004, we recorded that. So I was 20 years old at that point. And that was the last time that we used a producer. And honestly, I think it's because I never want to be in a position ever again where I say, this is what I think we should do without question, and somebody else says, absolutely not. Like, nope, I'm paying, so I'm right. And that's like, for me, and I think that there are certain people, like there are producers that leave very delicate footprints, and there are producers that are like, this is what it sounds like. It, like, they'll do one thing, and I know a person, I won't say his name, and I won't say what record he was working on, but a famous session musician who was working with a band in the 90s. And I won't say who this is either, actually, because I don't want anybody to get mad at me. So a famous session musician working with a famous band, and they have a giant producer. And it's their first album. It's a big deal. And the producer comes in the first day, and he gives everybody a pep talk. And he's like, all right, I'll see you guys. And then he leaves. And he like plays tennis or golf or whatever. And so he's like off, playing tennis and golf. He called on the phone a few times while they were making the record, but he didn't come back until the end. And so he was only there at the very beginning and the very end, but he hired all the people that were in the room, and he like shaped the energy, kind of. And he was, it's like his style of production was such that like he wasn't like gonna be in the room, micromanaging. It's not like somebody that's in everything. I was like, that's one extreme. Obviously, and then and obviously there's people like like a Phil Spector that's gonna control every single piece and element and wants to co-write the songs, and he's poking in at all angles and workshopping every facet of the arrangement, and and there's like there's a lot of space in the middle. I've just never like I imagine the arrangements as I go. It's like part of my songwriting process by and large, and so. On the next collection of songs that I have been working up over the last year, I'm going to go back to co-producing with Paul Hammer. And Paul's one of my best friends, first of all. He's been my friend for like 20 years at this point. And but he's been, my musical partner on so many things. He was in the District when I was in a band. He was in the band. And he's played on almost all of my albums. He's been in my touring band. Like any song of mine that I have played live, he has played at some point. He's like, he just knows my music very intimately. And when it seemed like we may never get the vaccine, we were like, okay, this is what we'll do. Like, we'll go lock ourselves and our families in a house together, and we'll just do the record alone, because we didn't know when we would be safe to go back into a studio with everyone. And so that's what we plan to do. So like we're gonna work together. It's not that I don't have collaborators. It's just that like the idea of someone saying no to me, like if I get to a point where I'm like, absolutely, this is what we should do. That for me is like I don't need that. Like that's not. I just have been making records for too long. It gives me a stomach ache just thinking about that. Basically.
Sorry, I brought it up. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't like it. Mm-mm.
All right. So I texted my brother a few days ago, and I said to him, so my guest this week is probably going to get a history lesson on Tenino, Washington. Do you know Tenino, Washington?
No.
Okay, so in your song "Practice What I Preach," you have lyrics that include, "Don't you take no wooden nickels. In fact, don't get paid in change. Just remember who you are, no matter what road that you take." Do you know the origin of wooden nickels and wooden money?
No, I mean I know what it means, but I don't know where it comes from. So lay it on me.
All right, so my brother teaches high school in Tenino, Washington. My mom lives in Tenino, Washington. So during the Great Depression, and Wayne, you probably know this, being up there in Tacoma, after the failure of the only bank in town in Tenino during the Great Depression, the Chamber of Commerce teamed up with the newspaper there, and they essentially printed up their own money, and it was wooden money, and that's where you get wooden nickels.
Go figure. So, interesting.
All right.
Well, now I know about that.
History lesson for you.
Oh, that's funny.
My father told me sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. There's many called, but few are chosen. Nothing worth a damn is free. Don't you take no wooden nickels. In fact, don't get paid in change. Remember who you are, no matter what road that you take. And I will do my best to practice what I
anyways, I thought that was cool, and shout out to Tenino, Washington, because they're pretty dang small. So this is probably the first mention that they've ever had in a podcast. Maybe not. All right.
I feel like, I don't want to say all of them, but like 75% of the podcasts that talk about serial killers take place in Washington State for some reason. I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's a lot of serial killer activity in Washington State in the 1970s and 80s, it seems like just based on my podcasts.
There was Ted Bundy went to school with my best friend in high school, his mom.
Ooh.
Yeah. And she said that he was a super nice guy and everybody liked him.
Yeah, that's why that one's so scary. That one, because there's certain ones where you're like, oh, that I can see how that guy, he's scary. He just starts talking and you're like, ooh,
right.
Ted Bundy, it's like you're like, this guy, he's pretty articulate. He's got a nice head of hair. Like, what? This guy? It's,
yeah, a little scary. Yeah. And then Green River Killer.
Oh yeah, that guy.
That was a big deal.
But it's crazy. Like what is the one that I've been listening to a lot? Crime Junkies. Yeah, they're every time they something happens in Washington or Oregon, they're like, oh, not again.
I know. I just finished watching season 1 of Dirty John on Netflix. And as soon as I turned it on and we were talking about, this really evil dude, I'm like, he probably grew up in Washington. And I was so relieved to find out that he grew up in Ohio and not Washington. So that was good. All right. Anything else? Anything else we want to talk about on Ron's music before we jump to the record he chose? Wayne, anything?
Well, I got a chance to listen to Bone Structure again, but I hadn't listened to Work before, and I really enjoyed that, particularly the title track, which has a really cool, like, Nebraska, that demo feel to it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Partner in Crime. I love that one, too. That has kind of a Springsteen feel also, but in a different way. I love both those. Those were the highlights for me.
Thank you. Yep. Work, we're all playing together in the same room, like pretty close together. And so in mixing it was like sort of infuriating, obviously, because there's everything is bleeding into everything.
Yeah.
It captured the delicateness of it. I mean, that's the story of me growing up. I had a teacher who really did tell my mother that if she didn't send me to trade school, I would probably end up in prison. Because all the boys that she had ever taught that were like me ended up in prison. And my mother said a bunch of words you can't say on podcasts to this woman. And, didn't send me to trade school. But here I am. I learned to trade, So.
That's great. Last thing. I love Minneapolis Cold. I already mentioned that. I love Lydia Luce already.
Oh, she's so good. She is so good. And yeah, we like that one. We imagined a few different ways. Like we tried it very, very, very sparse and delicate. And then it, the way that you hear it now with the strings and my slide guitar, I was like, instead of like playing slide guitar and playing, like melodies and licks, what if I just played dinosaur sounds? And so it just felt like the most like evocative of the emotion that I feel when I sing this song and this, the story of this, from my life. I was just like, yeah, I kind of wanted to feel like, like a screaming or something, like not like a delicate instrument playing melodies. And so that's always a fun, and because that's an inexact science when you're like, the target is very big when you're like, let's try to make this sound very emotional. It's like you go back and forth between like, some of the time you're like, oh no, I really did it, and other times you're like, is this just a bunch of noises now? Like, is this okay, or is this Yankee Hotel Foxtrot? Like, what are we doing here?
It is 4:45 in the morning. I miss you, but I don't know why. I don't think that I love
good. I love Lydia's last record as well.
Oh, she's the best. She's so good. She's such a good singer. She's such a good player. She writes such beautiful songs. She's also a delightful person. She came in the studio and it was just like somebody turned on all the lights in the room. She's like her energy is very positive, and she's a good egg. I like her a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Spoiler alert, Wayne. Her song Occasionally is probably going to make my end of year list. Play that a lot. It's a good song. All right. Ron, tell us what record you chose to revisit for this episode.
All right. So I chose Albert King's Born Under a Bad Sign album.
All right. So based off of listening to your music for years, I did not expect a blues record coming from you.
So I grew up, first of all, like when I imagine myself, the first thing that I think of when I think of myself as a musician is that I am a guitar player. Like before I think of myself as a songwriter or a singer or anything else, I think of myself as a guitar player. So that's part one of this, I would say. Part two is I really like much of what is distilled into my guitar playing that goes into my songs. You can... like, it's largely me doing Steve Cropper bits. It's like pretty specific Cropper-isms. And a lot of them happen on this record. And I'll kind of tell you about them as we go through the songs. But, there's really when I was a kid, at some point I was playing something like Little Wing, but not playing Little Wing. Somebody was like, "Oh, you're doing that Cropper stuff." And I was like, "What is Cropper?" And they were like, "What is Cropper?" And I was like, yeah, like, what do you mean? Like, I thought they meant like it had something to do with the phrasing. They're like, like Steve Cropper. And I was like, okay, tell me what is that? And then they were like, oh, it's this, and it's the, Soul Man, and, all of these, Hold On, I'm Coming, and all this, incredible, all the Otis Redding stuff, all this stuff that, you love. And I was like, oh, and I was very, like, I don't know how old I was. I was very young, like maybe, I don't know, 13 or so, something like that. Like, so it was all like music that I loved, but I didn't know about the people that had made it yet. And so that's really an important part of this. First of all, for me, this album is, you've got like Albert King leading up to this point, first of all, had never done anything that really resonated on any, real scale, like he was not popular in a big way, kind of at all. And he had, moved around, and he moves to Memphis and, signs to Stax. And he's not like a kid. He's like in his middle 40s doing this. This is the, the late 60s. Like they finished this record and put it out in 67. And so like, he's like 45 years old or something at this point. He's, and I guess like for me, Bruce Springsteen talks about this, like how Bruce embodies something that John Landau, his manager, like that he always wanted to be to some degree. And for me, he's like his rock and roll fantasy. And for me, some of that is in Albert King. Like Albert King, first of all, he wasn't like when I was a kid and learning about music, he wasn't like B.B. King where he would show up places and smile. Like Albert King died when I was like 9 or 10 years old. And so Albert King wasn't there, and he'd been sick for, a few years. Like, so he wasn't like a big public figure in the way that like B.B. King obviously lived much longer and participated in things. He was like a living being to me. And Albert King was like a myth. He was like Achilles or something. He's, it's even like, how tall is Albert King? And some people say he's 6'4", and some people say he's 6'7", right. And he's 250 pounds, and he's 300 pounds. He's like a myth, he's, and I had the benefit also of, all these people who influenced my playing. They already, they were a generation older than me or more. And so Clapton, Stevie Ray, Hendrix, all these guys who stole from Albert King, like directly, I was being influenced by those guys. So it felt very this felt very natural to me. I don't know. And so this record is important to me, first of all, because when I put it on for the first time, I was like, I got to learn how to play every note in this. And so I learned to play all of his parts first, like all the central lead guitar parts. So I learned those immediately. Like I learned them in a sitting. And that's the coolest part about this music, is it is deceptively simple. And that is what makes it so hard. Like you could take the heaviest jazz school kids, take a bunch of guys that are, like 21, 22 guys, girls, players, the best players you can find in your jazz school, their senior year of college. Take them, put them together and say, play this music. And they would play this record like garbage, because this is hard. Like it's a specific set of skills to do this. And first of all, you've got Booker T and the MGs and the Memphis Horns. So that's like the best thing that you can have. Like it's either Booker T and the MGs plus the Memphis Horns, or the Swampers plus the Memphis Horns. It's like that's it. That's as good as a band playing music for recordings can sound. But it's like there's no tricks in this music. Like a lot of times, like Steve Cropper is like kind of playing along in rhythm with and off of the rhythmic piano parts, or he's doubling the bass line. It's like really straightforward stuff, but it's like James Brown's music. It's like a lot of James Brown, the guitar playing and the horn parts especially. It's like you hear that music and young people who like are really chopsy musicians hear it and go, oh, that's easy. It's like this is deceptively, like I've been playing this music my whole life and it's never sounded just like this. It's like literally I've been playing this music for 25 years or something, like like before I could grow sideburns, I could play these songs, and I could. It's just like there's a lot of magic in this record, and this is an interesting thing for me. Is like people think of me as a songwriter. Like I people come to me for songs and for lyrics, and I don't like most of the songs on this album. Actually, I love this album because of the vibe and the energy and the arrangements and a lot of that. Like I think there are actually very few like great songs on this album, for me, and mostly it's about like how the record sounds, how the playing is, and like where he is in his life. This is somebody who was up against it. Like he had been trying to make it as a musician for a long, long time. He had tried a lot of things. He had played, he's also like, this is a great record about like, it's a space, the intersection of so many things in music. Like Albert King had played drums with Jimmy Reed. He had played with Ike Turner, had Ike Turner playing on his recordings and stuff. So this is a guy who like, you think of him as a blues musician, and I think it's like pretty reductive, because it's like he played, he was there at the beginnings of rock and roll. He played with all sorts of people and did all sorts of things. Later on, he's making funk. Like I think it's like to say that Albert King is a blues musician is like, I don't know, like an oversimplification, because he's so much. He's so many things and he was so many places. And I love the idea that it's Albert King at Stax with, like Isaac Hayes plays on this record, like it's like Dave Porter's writing songs. Like this is everything. It's every good thing about American music. Like, it's just as much like, tied to like Aretha or Sam and Dave as it is tied to Ike Turner and Chuck Berry and all these things that like make American music so special. And so so that's why this record is a lot of things, and there's a lot of what I love about American music as an arranger, as a producer. But yeah, maybe as a songwriter, this is not the one that I pick for songs. Like I picked this because I love the way it makes me feel, and like that like excitement that I felt the first time that I sat and listened to the whole album and like then sat and learned all the songs. Like I still feel like I put this on when I went running this morning and listened to it, and it's still like it makes you feel something inside that most records don't.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of the history of this. So I want to come back to a couple of the items. First, Albert King's not even his real name, so that's Albert Nelson. He decided to go by Albert King because he did want to try and be associated at some point with B.B. King.
Did you know that he told people like for a very long time that they were blood brothers, like they were were actually related, that they had the same father?
Correct.
Yeah.
The second thing was, you mentioned that he played drums with Jimmy Reed.
Yeah.
He recorded a record while he was there in Gary, Indiana, playing with Jimmy. Didn't sell, so he moved back to Arkansas where he grew up. From there, a couple years later, he then goes to be a part of the St. Louis scene, which you talked about with joining Ike Turner. Did he play in Ike Turner's band?
Ike Turner played on some of his recordings in this period.
Okay, that's what it was.
Ike played piano on them.
Right. So is it safe to say that like the two best things that happened to Albert came during this period? Because number one, he then records with Stax, who in the 60s were, they definitely had some pull. And then second, he teams up with Booker T, and records with them and the Memphis Horns, which again had a little bit of notoriety. So,
I mean, well, first of all, I would say this record comes out in 1967, and so you got to remember, until the end of 1967, Otis is still alive, and so while Motown is Hitsville, and Motown is making music that's crossing over, and it's like beloved by people of all races in America. It's like transcended the race music. That's what they're calling the charts at that point. It's like it transcends that and it becomes the popular music of America essentially. But so Motown is Hitsville, Stax is Soulsville. And they're like Otis is making recordings there that are not crossing over in the it's not the Temptations, it's not number one hits that every white teenager in America is getting, but there's a cachet to it. There's he is making records that are resonating, and they're a big deal in the black community. And so one of the things that they were able to do by having Booker T and the MGs and the Memphis Horns, like having that Stax sound on these recordings, is they were able to make this music cooler, and they were these are like the parts of this record that are good, like that are really good, the more energetic sounding recordings. That's like what I think made this record work so well for people. It's like not like down tempo, sad. It's like Born Under a Bad Sign is like got a drive to it that you don't expect with the subject matter. The song. I mean, and that's like, I think having Booker T in the room, having Cropper in the room, like having Al in the room, like when Al Jackson and Duck Dunn are like just leaning back and like it's disgusting. The grooves on these recordings are filthy. This is grown up music, and it feels sexy, it's seductive, it's powerful, and like that's not necessarily Albert King. It's like Jeff Buckley. Like Jeff Buckley's grace is like some part Jeff Buckley's gifts and ability, certainly. But a big part of what makes it work is that Andy Wallace was in the room saying, no, stop, yes, fine, no. Like having someone with a clear vision sonically that they're going to paint the whole record with. In this setting, I mean, that's what makes this, in my mind. It's like Albert King's artistry is incredible, but he was this good for a long time before this. Like it's not that he didn't have the ability to do this. It's that it's framed in the context of like it's at Stax. It's Booker T playing piano. It's it's Cropper. It's Duck. It's all these guys like Wayne and like it's the whole thing. It's like a very it's a cool place to be making music, and that's why the record works. Like they did a really good job of like, this is Albert King does Stax, and it's not just like Albert King does Albert King. It's like Albert King does Stax. And so it bridges the gap between that like R&B soul space and the kind of the blues thing that is happening. They're largely blues tunes, but they are treated and recorded as, R&B and soul music. And that's why it works so beautifully. And that's why this, I think for so many people, is the kind of quintessential collection of Albert King recordings.
Yeah. Wayne, what did we miss on the history of this record?
Now,
or Albert?
none. Now we've got it all.
Okay. One other thing that I did want to make mention. Albert is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Was inducted in 2013, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. And Wayne, I know we talk about the Rolling Stone greatest albums of all time. This was on the list in 2012. It was ranked number 491. Unfortunately, in the 2020 list, it's no longer there. So, no longer on the list. But
it's on my list.
It's on Ron's list. And that's the only list that matters for today.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least today, that's the only list that matters.
All right, so let's do the track-by-track analysis. So as a reminder, our scoring is based on number of songs on the record. Wayne, how many songs on this
11.
record? Oh, you're jumping right to it. All right, means our top song is going to get 11 points, next favorite 10, on down to lowest score of 1. And this album goes pretty quick. So you get 11 songs in 34 minutes. So here we go. Title track, Born Under a Bad Sign. It's first up.
I wouldn't have no luck at all. Hard luck and trouble been my only friend. I've been on my own ever since I was 10. Born on a bad side.
What do we know about, Ron? You seem to know a lot about the history of this. So what's the history on this song?
Well, first of all, like, this is like the song. Like, you could talk about basically everything that's good about this record is distilled into this song. Like, first of all, the 2 guitar attack thing in this, like when you listen to this recording, Cropper's playing the riff. He's playing a riff. He's staying out of the way. He's not doing any tricks. But he's absolutely integral, and you could almost just sit back and listen to the riff and like follow along with that. It's like one of those, we talked about Jimmy Reed. It's like that stuff, Keith Richards, that brand of where you're like, well, I guess you're the rhythm guitar player, but you're not always like strumming chords. He's playing what is essentially a lead line that drives the song. So it's got Cropper being Cropper. It's got Albert King doing the quintessential Albert King thing, the licks that are, there's only like, 8 licks, and then they're like broken down and amended slightly on this whole album. And so this record is like a beautiful distillation of like what he does. The horns are murdering. The piano is like this is exactly it's Duck and Al. The rhythm section does the whole thing. This for me is obviously far and away, like, if I could have given this 22 points, I would, like, this is better than every other song on this record by 100 miles. I love the song. And so this is a William Bell. I don't, this is one of those things because I don't sometimes at Stax, like I don't know how the co-writing stuff works. It's like, like if Dave Porter is writing a song and Isaac Hayes like goes to the bathroom, they like don't give him a credit, but if he says something from the bathroom, they do give him a credit. Like some of their crediting is interesting. So this is a William Bell song, who is a songwriter there and involved with lots of he's involved with lots of things. This is kind of the one that he is most well known for. But and Booker T has a credit, but he's he and Steve are like largely producing the record, even though they don't get the producing credit. That's like that's one of those. It is known. so he has a songwriting credit, I know. But he I don't know like what his involvement is like. But the song also, to me, like I love the universality of this. It's like I don't know what it is to be like like a 6'4", 6'7", like large built man who's born a black child in Mississippi or Arkansas or wherever he actually is from, and tells all the story he tells about himself, the life he actually led. Like I can't imagine what it would be like to walk in those in that path. Like I don't know what that life was like. But as a kid, when I heard this, it felt like everybody knows what it's like to feel down, to feel hurt, to feel like you were born to lose. And that to me is like what makes this song itself so special. Like is even though he's like like something like 60 years older than me and lived in a world completely different than my own, this immediately resonated with me. And the fact that like, he's a great interpreter of song as well. I think that's like, a lot of people, they're like, oh, this person doesn't write their songs. And it's like, I didn't care that Albert King didn't write this song. He didn't write most, he's not a songwriter really. He didn't write most of his songs. He's not like, that's not, I'd imagine he would never even have spoken of himself as a songwriter. He's like, I'm a guitar player, I'm a singer. And so like that's another thing to me is like he interprets this song so beautifully and it feels like his own. It's like once Aretha sang Respect, that's Aretha's song. It doesn't matter that Otis Redding wrote that song. Like that's an Aretha Franklin song. Aretha owned that. You can't.
I can say that about a number of Linda Ronstadt songs as well.
Bonnie Raitt does Angel from Montgomery and you're like, that's a Bonnie Raitt. I mean, and I bet that John Prine would have said the same thing, like he's like, once you hear her do it, it's like, I don't know who else is going to do that now.
Right, exactly.
And so to me, this is just like, I love it. I think some of the others, his other albums, other times in his career, he did stuff that's like cool, and I think there are other places on this album as well that are like really cool. But this song to me, it just like, it captivated me. I've listened to this song more than any of the other songs on the album. I love everything about the recording. I love everything about it. So this one for me is an 11 out of 11. It's my number one without question.
Absolutely. Wayne, what do you got on this one?
This is his signature song, absolutely. And I say it's an electric blues song, but it still has those kind of Delta blues themes in it of, bad luck, everything. I love the line, what is it? I know wine and women is all I crave. And at the end, that's what's going to put him in his grave. But it's a classic blues song. And like you're saying, the horns are used great. They're kind of subtle. And Steve Cropper, that guitar riff that drives it along, and then those flourishes by Albert King. It's this is my favorite song on this record too, far and away.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here. This is my 11 as well. It's been a while since we've had a unanimous top song.
We did it.
Yeah,
it's been 6 months.
Wow.
Last time was. What do you think the last time was, Wayne?
I got nothing.
Lover, You Should Have Come Over by Jeff Buckley.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was our last unanimous pick. All right. Next song is Crosscut Song.
Some call me wood cutting bin. The last girl I cut the wood for, she wants me back again. drag me across your lawn. I'll cut your wood so easy for you. You can't help but say I know.
So, Ron, you've already touched on how lyrically some of these are not super strong, but it's the vibe that goes along with it that just turns it into going, yeah, okay, I'm cool with this.
Yeah, like, Robert Johnson. If today was Christmas Eve and tomorrow would be Christmas Day, it's like, that's not, like, he could have said almost anything there. It's like, there's an energy, I would say, and that's... So Crosscut Saw, is for me, that is actually also my second favorite song on the album. I also think that the first side of this album is far superior to the second side, which happens a lot. But this, to me, number 2 is Crosscut Saw, so that gets 10 points from me. And it's got that rumba kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's very, 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 very nasty. So when I first got to college, I went to a jam, and I was like, growing up, I would, just go to jams and I'd bring a guitar, I'd get called up and I would play. And sometimes, when I was young, it's like sometimes you can hang and sometimes you get your head cut off. But I was used to going, especially because of a lot of the music that I liked, was like music, like the artists that were making it were black artists that were much older than me. And so I was going to, like, the jams that I was going to were primarily in places where I would be playing with black artists. So I got to college, and I went to a jam. I found a neighborhood that had a jam where they were playing the kind of music that I was into. And so I went with a Les Paul in my hand, Les Paul, a case for my Les Paul carrying in my hand, and I had drumsticks in my back pocket, which I was taking everywhere with me at that time. I was getting into playing drums. I was not very good, but I spent, I don't know, a year or 2 years playing drums with a lot of my time. So I go to this jam, and there's, like 50 guitar players, like there are at every jam. And there's one guy who's playing drums, and I walk in, and there's like almost everybody that's in the place is on the stage, and so I walk in, and I go to like sign up, and the guy sees that I have drumsticks in my pocket, and he goes, "You want to play drums?" And I was like, "Not really." I was like, I didn't, I just like carried them, it was just like a thing I did. And so, but I did, I got up and I played a shuffle, on something, and it was fine. And then somebody said, "All right, give me a rumba groove." And I was like, "Oh, what now? You want me to play?" I can't do that. And they were like, like kind of the Cuban kind of crosscut saw, and the man who's saying this to me is a big man, older, like older, like as old as my grandpa probably at that point, and got his guitar strapped on, and he like. Once I like, kind of shrug, like I can't play that on the drums. He says, "Leroy," and his brother Leroy stands up and he says, "What?" And he says, "Wake Daddy up." So next to this old man's brother, who's also an old man, is an older man who is their father. So they poke the old man who is asleep in a booth, and he's like rail thin and like very old and seems like he might be blind because they gotta guide him up there. It's a whole thing. So I'm sitting there like with my mouth open, like what is about to happen? Oh my goodness. So I get up and I move, and they situate this old, like crumpled up old man like on the drum throne, and he's like, kind of got like he's shaking a little bit. I was like, whoa, this is wild. And then, and I'm not kidding, this is real, this all happened to me. He takes batting gloves out of his pocket, puts on batting gloves on both of his hands, and then takes out these giant tree trunk sticks, like marching band sticks, like big, thick, and he just drops the beat. He leans in. It's like he just came back to life. It was like he was dead in the corner. And then the groove gets dropped and he is alive again. And he dropped it and I was like, oh man. I just went to the side, picked up my guitar, plugged it in. I was like, this I know how to do. Okay. I couldn't do it with the drums. And so now I'm playing with 3 generations of this family where this old man, it's like he could have died on the walk to the stage. But yeah, I didn't know how to play that groove. But that to me, the groove is the thing. You jump on that train with Al and Duck and they're just taking you there, and it feels just right. It's everything. So to me, Crosscut Saw, again, it's like kind of, it's a little silly, as some blues tunes can be, but it just feels so good. I love that one. So for me, that's my number 10.
All right, Wayne, anything on Crosscut Saw? I don't know how you top Ron's story there. My gosh.
You can't. But I'll just say what I have written down here. I noticed that Latin beat right off. I think that is probably the most interesting part about it. I mean, sexual euphemism in a blues song,
all over.
Nothing extraordinary. I guess for me, him being a guitar player and that really being big, I think the horns sometimes drown out the guitar. And then he's got these hush vocals. I'm used to that big, that voice we just heard on Born with a Bad Sign. So I gave it a 3.
Okay. All right. This is my 7. One thing that I didn't note earlier, the Born Under a Bad Sign, so it was a moderate hit for Albert, hit number 49 on the R&B chart. But this one, Crosscut Saw Blues, was a bigger hit for him, reached number 34 on the R&B, and he re-recorded this multiple times over his career. This became almost his signature song.
Yeah, he reimagined this a bunch of ways too. That's kind of another thing that's fun about this, if you follow him through his career, is they played it without this groove. They did it other ways. Like I said, he had a funk period. He's an interesting guy. I think he gets pigeonholed, but he did a lot of cool things, actually.
Yeah. All right. Next song, Kansas City.
I'll be standing on the corner of 12th Street and Vine with my Kansas City baby and a bottle of Kansas City wine. Well, I may take a plane, I may take a train, but if I have to walk, I'm going just the same. I'm going to Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come.
So for me, this is the third song on the album. It's my number 9. Starting
to see a trend.
The front side of this record side A is very good in comparison to the rest of the record, especially. I mean, and this is it's one of the great blues standards. And so it's a good song. It's a good arrangement. This is one that there's just nothing wrong with it. For this kind of an album, it's it feels like it makes sense here. And I think that because some of the songs are so lacking, for me, I like that they chose a standard like this and put it in there, and gave it a whirl. And so that's why this is my third favorite song on the album. So that's a 9 for me.
And there's a lot of versions of this out there.
Yeah.
And I got to say, this might be my favorite version of the song.
There you go.
Yeah, this, and I've heard a Fats Domino version that's probably close, but this is probably my. I mean, this song's part of the foundation of rock and roll, I've heard the Beatles record. I've heard Little Richard's version, but yeah, this one I would say his vocals are just so smooth. It sounds a lot different than the Wilbert Harrison one that's made famous. He's just there's just something smooth in his voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the bass line and the horns on this. That's what makes this my favorite version of this song. And there's if you just look up Kansas City in Spotify, there's 200 instances of this song out there. So there's no shortage of songs on this. This is my 10. Wayne, your score?
This is also my 10. Just
spoiler alert, Ron, you already mentioned how good the first half is. Yeah, our top 5 songs are on side A, just so you know.
Yeah.
All right, next song, Oh Pretty Woman.
Oh, pretty woman, what you trying to do? You kept on fooling around till I got stuck on you. So you just drop that mess and come down off your throne. Stop using my poor heart for just a stepping stone. Pretty woman, what's the matter with you? Can't make you love me no matter what I do.
And that's not to be confused with the Roy
Roy
Orbison
Orbison.
song.
Yeah.
Or the Van Halen cover of that song.
Yeah. So for me, this is my number 7. So this is the first time I've deviated from the order that they go in on the album for points. I just think his guitar playing is really like muscular in this, and I think also so like I said, there's a few things that Cropper does that are really, really good, and they're like fundamental things that you can do as a guitar player within an ensemble that really work. And one of them is leaning into the bass line a lot and like largely doubling the bass line. And so Steve Cropper is doing a lot of that on this recording, and it just makes the bass line feel that much more central and that much more driving. And so to me, I mean, there's so much good in the playing on this album. I mean, everybody in the room, Stax is like, even though in practice, I'm sure many of the people, are big ego people because they did a lot of giant stuff. I'm sure how they feel about themselves notwithstanding. I think that this is like egoless playing. Basically, it's just like everybody's like leaning in and driving the song, and that's something that I really love about this. So that's why this is my this one gets 7 points for me.
Do you think it's that there is no ego in the room, or do you think that it is everybody in the room knows that the other players are on the top of their game, so they've got to step it up?
Yeah, I think it's like, like the band. I think the band is an example of this as well. It's like when you take a bunch of people who can really, really, really play, and then you put them together, and everybody comes in with an understanding that all you're going to do is serve the songs and nothing more, and everybody buys into that. Like, that's how you make great records. And it's why, like, people who go to jazz school or people who love, those people are excited about Snarky Puppy, but like lots of people like Born Under a Bad Sign. I think that's like the difference. It's like you don't have to be educated in music in some way to understand why this music is good. And it's just because it just sounds like a bunch of people playing a song. And I mean, it's also why this music is, like I said, hard to play, because it's deceptive. Like, you have to learn to do this. Like this bass playing, like on many of these songs, like the way that the rhythm section is locked together, and then the piano parts that are, tied into the rhythm section, or the guitar parts that are tied, like that stuff is hard to do. That's very hard if you're laying back on the back end of the beat like that to get everybody to play together. Like, this is music for like adult players. This is not for it's your first day. This is real heavy stuff. And like, I think a lot of people, in my mind, it's a very immature notion to think that like you have to show off to do something good. It's like, this is, I think, about like Booker T and the MGs and the Memphis Horns, like this group of people playing on these records. Like, it doesn't get any better than this. Like, why is Clarence Clemens the most heard saxophone player in the history of the world? Well, that's easy, because he played on great songs. Like that, so it's like you get into a great song and you do your job and you serve the song, and that's it. And I just think, like, as a musician, it's easy to get lost in like, I'll show you, like these guys are they're just playing the songs. And I also think that, like, to survive within this unit, you had to understand that was what you were doing. Like, you had to play the songs, serve the songs. Otherwise, you weren't going to survive as a member of this group.
Yeah, for sure. Wayne, any last thoughts on Oh Pretty Woman?
Oh, Steve Cropper is the star, is the hero on this. This is my favorite solo on the record, and then I like the way the horns and the guitar do this almost call and response thing, or the back and forth with that. And this is lyrically, I also love this because he's warning her. She has little to no care for him at all, but yet he's still warning her. Like, if you keep this up, if you keep ignoring me and you keep treating me bad, one day you're gonna see. I just love that.
All right. What was your score on this one?
9.
Ron, what was your score again?
7.
That's right. And this is my 6. All right. Next song is Down Don't Bother Me.
So long. No down, don't bother me. I've been down so long. No down, don't bother me. I'm gonna take all of my trouble and cast them in the deep blue sea.
And that is my number 6.
All right. So first of 2 songwriting credits on the album that is credited to Albert King, because most of the other songs that we've talked about were either staples or somebody else wrote those. And this is this the only one that he is the sole songwriter?
Yeah,
I think this.
Yeah, that's I have that also to say. It's like, it's interesting, when you're playing in standard forms, that like how one comes to be the songwriter of note on something. And so I wonder, like, is this something he had heard before, or, somewhere along his way, or did he make this up? Like, it's like a different, the version of songwriting, like what songwriting means is somewhat different, I guess, when you're working in a standard form like this. So I wonder about that. I'm curious. I wish I could ask him. And this is another one where, like, so we were talking about some of the imbalances in the mix on this album. This is an example of, it seems like that they took whatever fader the horns were on and whatever fader the bass was on almost every other song, and they just switched them. So the horns, which are generally fairly prominent on these recordings, are tucked way, way back, and Duck's bass is like way, way out in front, or just more so than any other of the recordings. And I think it's neat because this is another one where it really it's another opportunity for the bass to really drive the song, even though he's not like doing anything crazy. He's it's just like a good kind of muscular sort of bass line. But that's something that I've always found interesting about this particular recording on this album, is just like, it does feel as if like they took the horns and they were just like, let's just see what happens if we just, and then they swapped the horns with the bass, and now the horns are very quiet and tucked and the bass is very loud. So for me, this one's a 6.
Gotcha. Wayne, what do you got on this one?
I gave it an 8. I really like to say there's some shuffle to the piano. It just pushes that blues feel even further.
Yeah. All right. This is my 5. Also shortest song on the album at 2 minutes and 11 seconds. So I don't know what that means, but all right. Next song is The Hunter.
I got my love gun loaded with hugs and kisses, and when I pull the trigger, there will be no misses. Ain't no need to hide, ain't no use to run, 'cause I got you in the sight of my love gun. Hands up!
So this is one of the ones that gets into this is not a like Dave Porter and Isaac Hayes are in the not just in the building but in the room, and somehow we ended up recording this song. I really don't like the song itself, but the recording is wonderful. Like the way that the second, like the Cropper guitar part is locked in with the piano, it's just like helping to drive the band. It's this rhythmic thing, and it's sort of like on the verse of "Hold On, I'm Coming," like what he's playing, and like after the beginning of Soul Man, after he plays that boom, well, plays the lick, like after that he's like got this kind of like strummy drive the band, thing. Like one of the things that's cool about these recordings, it's like while there is a horn section on these, Cropper, like a lot of what he highlights is like as a guitar player, you can take the place sometimes of the horn section. A lot of what he does represents some of that. Like sometimes he's playing like he's a part of the horn section. Sometimes he's playing like he's a part of the rhythm section. And he's just masterful. He's like masterful at playing songs and participating in this ensemble. So he's like, since there is a horn section, what he's doing is he's picking things to highlight. Like if he wants to help drive the rhythm, he's got a strummy little thing, and that's what's happening on this song. And if he wants to highlight the bass line, he's doubling the bass line. And if he doesn't do a lot of his like sixthy, Cropper-isms like the beginning of Soul Man. Like when people imagine Steve Cropper, they often imagine that. He doesn't do a lot of that on this album. And I think it's because Albert King is largely is only playing on the three highest strings of the guitar. That's like part of his shtick. And so Steve is not playing as much stuff in the higher register of his guitar, and most of those, like Cropper-isms that you think of, like the beginning of Soul Man, most of those are on the three highest strings of your guitar. And so I think that's probably why. It's like it's all very calculated. It sounds simple. He's like, you hear it and you're like, oh, he's kind of strumming some chords here, but it's just like it's all so smart. It's so they're all making choices. And so I really like this recording, even though I don't like love the song. And so I give it a 2, but like if I was just choosing on the recording, it would go higher because the recording is rad. But the song is not my favorite. So this is a 2 for me.
Gotcha. Wayne, when I'm looking at the lyrics of this one, because I've got you in the sights of my love gun. Wayne, did you immediately think of Kiss?
Of course.
Okay.
I'm 52 years old.
All right. I wanted to make sure that you were thinking of Kiss.
And this one was an